Welcome to another episode of Policy in Wonderland. I'm your host, Avi. In Wonderland, just like Alice, we are going to explore and see the wonderful world of insurance, InsureTech, and everything that's connecting to this amazing ecosystem. In Policy in Wonderland, you will meet startups from all over the world, key figures, brokers, companies, and more. So without further ado, we travel today to North Carolina, and I want to invite my guest to join me as we go down the rabbit hole. Please welcome Franklin Manchester from SAS. Hey, Franklin.
Hey, thanks for
Great to
having
see
me.
you again. Great.
You as
Thank
well.
you for joining us. Thank you. I love your session topic in the coming ITC in a month from now. We will listen in a couple of days, so it will be in a month from now. ITC 2024, of course. And in this interview, I would like to explore with you a couple of topics of
Hmm.
several key topics, and your point of view is really interesting because I find it a bit different from the rest of. I don't know if like a odd kind of point of view, but a different one and
Hmm.
more solid, by the way. So before we tap in all these topics, a bit about yourself, your background, why
Hmm.
and how you are in insurance.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I'm always happy to nerd out with you or anyone else on the topic of insurance. So, looking forward to this discussion and seeing you at ITC and seeing all of you at home at that wonderful event here in October. So, a little bit about me. I've been with SAS Institute now for a little over 2 years as a strategic advisor for their insurance community. SAS has been working with insurance companies for 50 years. My role as a strategic advisor is really to connect our customers, insurance companies, reinsurers, insurtechs, with the technology and ensure that the problems that they're attempting to solve with those technologies are actually intersecting, right? The thing is doing what it is supposed to do and adding value. The reason I am in this role is for about 20 years prior to that, I was at two different insurers, Allstate and Nationwide, mostly Nationwide, in various roles, underwriting, sales, analyst, property and casualty for personal lines, commercial lines, operations. I immediately transitioned from a role as a sales director managing about $1 billion in premium, predominantly here on the East Coast in the US. But like a lot of us during COVID, I started reevaluating the trajectory of my career and what did I want to do when I was growing up, right? And SAS has a brilliant and storied insurance practice and located about 20 minutes from where I live currently. So took the leap and have loved every minute of it. So that's a little bit about me.
Nice. So let's step in. Let's start from the bottom line. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Uh, how do you see this recent 7.5% industry growth
Hmm.
affecting the overall landscape of insurance tech?
Hmm.
Because it's like a significant growth, especially in insurance. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at results from 2022, from a combined ratio perspective, it was a historic year for bad reasons, right? You have evolving weather patterns, severe convective storms, inflationary pressures, frequencies just kind of going through the roof. And that showed up in results for global insurers from a P&C perspective. You also have, we'll call them issues associated with life and health. And longevity post-COVID. So insurers were struggling with results, right? And if you look at 2023, results have improved. That 7.5% that you quoted earlier was the fastest growth that we've seen since 2006. And it came through in all three lines. So life, PNC, and health all grew. Now, that's a great result on the surface to start talking about, okay, is the ship getting righted? I think that's partially correct, but why it is getting righted, I think, is more the interesting question, because what has been happening to consumers and businesses during the same period of time? Insurance premiums are going up. And in a lot of the major markets, that percentage increase is double digits. So if you look at the results here in the US, auto insurance has increased over a post-COVID 22% year over year. And consumers and businesses are feeling that squeeze, right? So we cannot take that initial result as a, hey, things are getting better for the reasons that are good for the entire ecosystem, because essentially the individual and the consumer and businesses are shouldering a lot of that growth through rate increases, while conversely, you have underwriting actions that are being taken where carriers are reducing coverage, moving markets, moving from markets, that type of thing. So I would caution us when we're having a conversation about the global insurance industry and the results that we're seeing, that we've taken a somewhat unsophisticated approach to improving results by pulling the rate lever, or to use a different analogy, a hammer, right? And there are other ways we can go about, more sophisticated ways we can go about attempting to correct the results that we're seeing by addressing the root causes of the issues that are driving those results in the first place. So I mentioned inflationary pressures. I mentioned, increased frequency and severities, things that people who have been in the industry for decades are scratching their heads and saying, "Why is this happening?" Right? I mean, I feel like everyone feels that same pressure, whether or not you're on the carrier side, you're on the technology side, et cetera, et cetera. And one executive I saw at ITC just last year, we were sitting down and catching up, and she put it as bluntly as I've heard anyone put it. Something has to change. She was sitting there shaking her head over a cocktail and saying, something has to change. And that's part of why I love having these conversations, right? The thing that will define our success here is, if I can quote Jamil Qureshi, connecting two things which have previously been unconnected, right? And I think for us to address the bottom line, it's how we use technology to explore a white space that we have not contemplated using it previously. And that's where AI comes in. That's where autonomous systems come in. That's where algorithmic systems come in, and how we use these powerful technologies to supplement what our people do. I am a big fan of another quote, Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, at the Taiwan University commencement last year. He said, AI is not going to take your job. Someone who knows how to use AI will. And I think that is the crux of the discussion we should be having. It allows our people who are using those technologies to enrich themselves and their development and continue to add value. It allows them to take their domain expertise in underwriting or claims or sales and marketing and supercharge what they're doing, because people is the key, right? I do not believe there is going to be an outcome in the near future where the insurance industry is being run by AI. I just don't. We are going to need people at the helm to use those powerful tools to fulfill promises, to settle claims, to make better underwriting decisions, faster underwriting decisions, manage larger portfolios, and get the end consumer, the individual or the business of those insurance policies, coverage options, et cetera, the protection that they need to do what the industry has done for centuries, and that is allow people to live their lives, to help them manage their daily risks so that they can own a home, they can run a business, they can, live and work without fear of their dependents going without if something were to happen to them for life insurance proceeds, to get the health care that they need. I think those are all very real possibilities when we look at the very powerful AI that's in front of us, and we get to address the bottom line while we're doing it.
Before a step for the AI
Mhm.
generative AI, and all we know right now is it's all based on data analytics,
Yes.
right? Uh,
Mhm.
which segment in insurance, life, P&C, or health do you believe presents the most interesting opportunities for innovation in analytics?
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of synthetic data. When we talk about generative AI, I would I would offer for the audience's consideration when we talk about generative AI, because of what happened on November 30th in 2022 when ChatGPT was introduced to the world, we have almost a reflexive reaction, a reflex, excuse me, to only define generative AI as large language models, co-pilots, AI assistants, like that type of thing. But I would expand that definition to say our minds have been influenced by what happened on November 30th on 2022 when ChatGPT was introduced to the world. And because of that, we tend to consider generative AI, just large language models, co-pilots, AI assistants, that type of thing. I would offer we need to expand our thinking that generative AI includes other things like synthetic data generation, and in some instances, digital twins fueled by synthetic data. And when we think about the value that is going to come from using generative AI, McKinsey did a really great job of identifying for insurers, the insurance ecosystem, generative AI could add between 50 and 70 billion in value when we consider code generation, marketing tools, that type of thing. And synthetic data for me is a stronger use case for this AI inflection point we're sitting at right now for enriching how we are making decisions on things like insurance pricing, underwriting decisions, claims decisions, because synthetic data can start filling the gaps where we do not have data. So the severe convective storms that I mentioned earlier, or flooding that is happening in areas where floods have never occurred, right? Wildfire risk that seems to be cropping up everywhere on the planet that has a news feed. Those events are happening that may have not happened in 100 years, 500 years, are vexing people in those roles trying to make decisions about what premium do I charge for this territory? Do I insure flood? Like, how do I address wildfire risk? These things are becoming incredibly difficult because we don't have any loss experience. Like we've never had claims there before, so it's just kind of like us scratching our heads and shrugging our shoulders, like, I don't know what to do. And so the result of that is you have carriers that are, as I mentioned previously, removing coverage, retreating from markets. What if we took synthetic data, this type of generative AI, the subset of generative AI, and we started infusing that into our pricing and reserving, into our underwriting decision models, into all of the functions that we need data for an insurance company. So now instead of a data set like this, right, you expand it to a data set like this. And now I can actually do some things. So the first question I typically get when we start having this conversation about synthetic data, well, how good can it be? Turns out it's 99% accurate relative to actual data. It has a very high accuracy rate. And not to get too technical, when you start talking about generative adversarial networks or synthetic minority oversampling techniques, GANs and SMOTs, those techniques have been around for a very long time. So we are actually pretty good at generating synthetic data that maintains the statistical properties of the actual data set. And as a bonus, since it is not real data, you avoid some of the privacy concerns associated with using real
Nice.
data. So it's a win-win, right? If I can quote
Uh,
Lipori, this is a win-win. So the downside of that, that I've seen play out in a real conversation in real life, you do still have um, naysayers in the industry that say, we don't like synthetic data. We like real data. And then the counterpoint to that is, well, if you don't have real data and you have to do something, this is a great bridge until you get to that real data. And so for the folks that are listening, when we think about generative AI and use cases, I would share another statistic with you when it comes to AI leaders and AI laggards from McKinsey. All right. They have been monitoring the situation for years, going back to like 2018. There's an article about total shareholder um, return. Okay. And the difference for leaders who use AI versus laggards, and it's an insurance specific number. Over that 5-year period, insurance AI leaders generated 6 times the TSR, 6 times the laggards. Okay. And if I take into consideration what that means for the business and the first topic we talked about, the bottom line, you should be exploring AI. I understand we are just scratching the surface, but you should be exploring use cases. And that's where this concept that we're going to talk about in ITC, failure, FAI, LUR, is always an option. We cannot let fear dictate our actions moving forward. There is a way forward with using AI that does not create significant enough downside risk for the enterprise that you cannot get to that AI leader space where your TSR is higher, okay? And frankly, the gap between AI laggards and AI leaders in that same McKinsey article, it's growing. It's growing over that same 5-year period. So if you are not exploring AI use cases for insurance, you are getting left behind.
So you say that the old market stakeholders
Mhm.
started to understand the AI field and that they need to understand it more carefully and to understand why they need to use it, not in a way I don't want it to be on my sheet. Like I, as the CEO of an insurance company, okay,
Mhm. Sure.
maybe I will leave it 3, 4 years from now, and I don't want any bad result on my name, and I don't want to enter any new tech. But this is not kind of tech that you can ignore. And
Mhm.
uh, how do you like how do you answer to this? Like sorry for say that, but the old stakeholders, like the
Mhm.
traditional, you know what, the traditional
Sure. Yeah, yeah,
stakeholders.
yeah. So I have a colleague here in the U.S. We presented at a different insurance conference earlier this year, and how he framed this discussion, I'm a big fan of. This is the issue that is going to define your career. Okay. So if you look at the decision makers around the C-suite, the CEO, the next level down of direct reports, and you think about where those individuals want to be in the next 10 or 15 years, okay, and what they want their legacy to be. If you are not exploring these tools, your legacy might be that your organization loses market share, continues to see poor results, becomes insolvent, becomes acquired, right? And we have an example of this in recent memory that I would offer as proof to why I believe what I believe. So, 20, 25 years ago when the commercial internet came out, okay? And we all had the AOL dial-up, modem sound in our
Yeah,
ears, right?
yeah.
We had insurers who were forbidding people from using internet searches to do their job. And there are people in, claims roles, underwriting roles, sales roles who are going home and on their personal computers working and doing research because they saw the power in that tool. All right. And now fast forward to today. Back in 2016, I was a part of a commercial underwriting internal audit where we got a crit for an internet search that we did that was part of our standard practice. Like you go through the underwriting checklist and it was like, Google this business. and see if there are any hazards associated with the business. I mean, we use Google as a verb now, and it's a part of our standard processes. So is it really that out of context or that far-fetched that we would use AI as a part of our standard practices, just like Googling or a
Google.
basic internet
Right.
search has become a part of it today? And I will remind you, when ChatGPT first came out, many organizations were banning it. There
Mm-hmm.
was a
Right.
there was a BlackBerry survey of 2,000 IT decision makers where I believe it was 75% said they were banning its use because they didn't understand it, and there were multiple instances of intellectual property getting leaked into the large language model, right? So, and that's okay. That is a failure, right? That is something, hey, we failed here. But the point is, failure isn't bad. The point is that you fail and then you learn, right? Failure is a great teacher. The old expression, get knocked down 6 times, stand up 7, right? This is the exact mantra I want to encourage those same decision makers you're talking about to don't be scared, right? There is value here. And if you find that value, that is going to define your legacy. That is how you and your team and your company are going to be remembered as an AI leader and not a laggard.
For me, this a good point to take me to the next topic because it's like integral topic for the AI and the tech is the talent
Mhm.
gap that we have in insurance. It's like
Yes.
let's see, it's a general worldwide problem. Okay, we are like a 65, maybe more years old insurance agency, and in your opinion, how can the insurance industry become more attractive to tech savvy millennials or in general millennials?
Yeah, that's
And this by the way, sorry,
mhm.
but this is why I call my podcast Policy in Wonderland. It's like insurance don't need to be like boring or insurance. I don't know, the CEO or something. It's no, it's also fun, like
Yeah.
another topics, but let's explore it. Like Alice was boring on the field with her sister and then go down the rabbit hole, exact like Wonderland. So yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I'm chuckling because I am getting a little older myself, right? And I don't see a ton of recent,
This is why I
yeah.
kind of bored. So for me, yeah,
You look
the
very
next.
sophisticated, sir. Very sophisticated. Yeah, it is not a career that recent college graduates, those who are starting their career, are actively seeking. The stat that I shared a little earlier was 44% of millennials don't find insurance sexy or interesting, right? Um, but I would tell you, insurance is sexy, and I have a joke for you around actuarial sciences. So you can look this up. Forbes did a study on the sexiest career of the 21st century, and they actually did it twice. They repeated it recently and reaffirmed that being a data science is the sexiest career of the 21st century. I know plenty recent
Wait.
college graduates, early 20 somethings who are like, I'm going to get into data science. That sounds really interesting. Well, I would tell you that my actuary friends say actuaries are the original data scientists. So by the transitive property, actuaries are sexy. Now, now that said, like in all seriousness about, the roles in insurance, like being an underwriter, being a claims adjuster, being an actuary, they are not typically those that jump out as, hey, I want to do this for the rest of my career. But tying this question back to what we previously were talking about with AI, we do see um, interest, okay, in careers from young professionals, recent college graduates, et cetera, where the role will use AI, okay, where you will get access to these powerful AI tools, which makes you more valuable in your career. So, personal story for me, I use AI every day. I have access to Microsoft Copilot, and they have a great platform for training, and I utilize it for, summarizing meeting notes, sending out action items, like, summarizing email threads, that type of thing. And those aren't very sexy use cases, right? But I save like an hour or two a day, really. I mean, we spend a lot of time, connecting virtually, over meetings. Meetings get scheduled outside of business hours. We answer an average of 150 emails a week, right? Those are things that bog us down. Well, I teach you how to use an AI assistant, a co-pilot, right? I give you access to a large language model or synthetic data generation or a digital twin. And those are really neat tools to be able to use, but they are things that make you more valuable because now you know how to use them, right? And think about what I just said about Jensen Wang. AI is not going to take your job. Someone who knows how to use AI will. So adopting AI is going to be important for the business because it will start solving some of our really critical issues. It will define the decision makers' careers we previously talked about. It will help shore up results on the bottom line, and it is going to help us with the talent gap. So attracting the people who will use it and also filling in the gaps because we don't have enough warm bodies to be able to throw at a problem. I would take a team of 10 who knew how to use AI tools really well over a team of 100 who don't. I just would, right? I believe that I could give a commercial underwriter, okay, an AI authority grant and access to an AI co-pilot, a synthetic data generator, a workbench to synthesize all that, who knew how to do a little coding, but by and large, those AI tools are going to fill a lot of those gaps for them. I could give that person a $1 billion portfolio they could manage by themselves today. I am uniquely convinced that these AI tools have become so powerful, so effective that someone who had that domain expertise, who also knew how to use these tools, could do the job of a dozen similarly educated, domain expertise, trained individuals with those AI tools. And maybe someone will try it. Maybe somebody will hear this and say, you know what? I bet we could. But as I mentioned previously, we're just scratching the surface. We need to keep going. The talent gap is real, right? The other point I would make around the talent gap and attracting new workers, attracting individuals is honestly at the root of the branding that the insurance industry has, right? So everyone has a poor insurance experience or knows someone who does, right? I mean, it's just a reality that we've dealt with, that I've dealt with for, over 20 years now. But if I were to say to a millennial, someone who's looking to um, start the trajectory of their career, we are the only industry who comes with help on literally the worst day of your life. Okay. We are in a business of fulfilling promises. That's what we do. Our profession is a noble profession. And when I think about the underwriters that I've trained over the years, the claims adjusters that I've worked with, every single one of them has a story that speaks to here, not here. Okay. That family they helped, that thing that they accomplished. It is at the root of everything that we do. And we need to talk about that more, right? You can make money doing this. Okay. Like that is
Exactly.
that is true. But our business is a noble one. And our role is to illustrate that point with these young individuals to say, you could spend the next 30 years, managing a hedge fund, okay? Working in manufacturing. There's other adjacent careers that, probably speak to the insurance profession. But I would ask you to question yourself, would you consider that profession noble? Would you be proud to share that this is the impact that I made to this person's life, these people's lives? I feel like I have. And I'm very blessed to be able to say that out loud. So
Likewise.
sorry to get on my soapbox, Evie, about this.
No, no, it's a great point of view. But for me, it take me to the next topic because the younger generation is really important for him. It's the environment, climate.
Mhm.
There are, I think, the millennials. I don't know if even the alpha, but
Mhm.
especially the millennials are very involved in all the climate risk and the climate change, of course, etc. I think it maybe could be like another aspect for the talent gap to create more opportunities for the younger generation. If you really want to solve a problem, a big problem like a climate, I think insurance could be your solution or your path to this solution. Because for me, I don't think there is any other industry that could be more involved than insurance because
Mhm.
it's life, it's health, of course, and of course PNC, earthquakes, floods, you name it. So let's step in the climate risk. How can insurers better predict and manage climate-related risk using, of course, advanced analytics,
Yeah.
data?
It's a big topic, right? So not to
I don't
uh,
care if we can do like a second webinar on this topic, but
sure.
yeah, go
I
ahead.
think we could do an entire series on climate risk. So let's set the table. I would describe the current situation as dire. And I don't share that word lightly. If you look at the stats around 2023, 2023 set a record for the number of billion-dollar disasters, and it was the most fatal year since 2010 for climate-related deaths. There were 95,000 fatalities global. It's a sobering set of statistics, not one, but multiple. Okay. And whether or not you believe in um, climate change or global warming, these are real numbers and these are people's lives we're talking about. Now, insurers have for centuries been at the intersection of disaster, right? They have set up a coffee shop, literally, right, where people come to say, like, I don't know what I'm going to do because there is some form of catastrophic risk that they are attempting to solve. So this is in our history. This is in our blood. Okay. And when I think about wildfires, flooding, named storm activity, severe convective storms, that type of thing, insurers have the domain expertise and the experience to handle what happens next, right? We literally show up when a disaster has struck. So it's not like it's unfamiliar territory, first and foremost. But the thing with climate risks that I think we need to consider when we're folding in the AI conversation is a fundamental shift of the industry's value proposition. So insurance works now because of indemnification. Okay. Something happens and you're reimbursed to the extent money can rebuild your life or your livelihood. All right. But for that to happen, there has to be a loss. We do see things like parametric insurance products that are no longer a loss trigger, but an event trigger. And that's a great first step. But we need to go further in this conversation. We need to be squarely in the space of how do we shift the industry value proposition from indemnification to predict and prevent. Now, prediction is something that's really wonky, right? Because by its very nature, you will never know if you prevented something because the thing that proves that you prevented it is no longer there. Like I get that. It's a paradox, right? But we do see insurers starting to dip their toe into the water. You see State Farm had partnered with ADT to secure about 2 million devices to prevent home fires. You're starting to see success stories like Apple Watch successfully prevented somebody's heart attack because of real-time monitoring. Um, we saw a stat from Cambridge Mobile Telematics for a reduction of distracted driving that translated to billions of dollars in economic loss saved and real lives saved as well. This is the key to addressing climate risk. It is the idea that we are starting to use technology to get ahead of the loss. And I have a story I'm going to tell you briefly about something that I recently had an opportunity to get involved in with wildfire risk. So when we think about wildfire and how it impacts people, we have this encroachment that's taking place where people are going into areas where previously people have not been. All right. So by virtue of that population expansion, it's creating more risk for us because people are building in areas that are maybe more susceptible to wildfire. Okay. When that happens, right, it's what's called the wildland urban interface, or WUI, where there's a chance that a wildfire, which had been naturally occurring, is going to threaten the destruction of property or loss of life. Now, when we think about first responders and how communities, you know, build resilience to wildfire, right? They often will have a response to a fire that prevents that fire, that wildfire, from reaching civilization, right? So this project I got a chance to get involved in was actually using aerial imagery to create the fire boundary, the map around the fire that shows here's the head of the fire, the foot of the fire, the direction it's moving upslope, you know, the properties of the fire. Is it a smoldering fire? Is it a crowning fire? Like that type of thing. Well, the customer in this case was creating that shapefile by hand. It was literally taking hours. And by that time, the fire had moved on, right? So one of our data scientists actually took that image, all right, and wrote a software package that can be pulled up onto a dashboard that creates that same shapefile in 15 seconds. So now what we do is we take a series of images, okay, and we run that program, that same 15 seconds, and now we can see how the fire is moving. And then we can pull in other data, like weather data, prevailing winds, moisture content in the soil, like that type of thing. And we give that dashboard to a first responder to say, okay, here's how we're going to respond. Here's how we're going to direct our attack. This wildfire is moving towards this community. All right, we're going to set up here and we're going to attack the fire here. Or maybe we do nothing. An appropriate response might be like, we are not going to endanger ourselves or our equipment, or maybe take away from fighting another fire, because based off of where this fire is moving and these other data that is on this dashboard, I don't need to, and I won't, right? So why is that important to insurers? Well, because insurers are already using aerial imagery to do all sorts of things. They're using it for roof damageability. They're using it for, you know, post catastrophic loss, like determining claims damage. They're already in the space. So why not take the additional step to say, you know what, I might not be able to prevent every wildfire that happens. I might not be able to prevent, you know, every single loss. But if I have this powerful tool that I partner with the community to deploy, I can protect the homes and the businesses and the people I have insured in those communities. And again, Evie, I've got to remind you, this is not a new story. The Philadelphia Contribution Ship, which was founded by Ben Franklin in these United States when we were still a colony, right? Started first because Ben Franklin was a firefighter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
established an insurance company to help fight fires. Like, this is an old story. Like, you know, all we are doing now, instead of, you know, using the emblems on the side of the house, we're just using data and streaming analytics and AI. And there's many stories we can tell about this around catastrophe modeling with earthquakes, with predict and prevent type of behaviors. I am uniquely convinced that when we talk about climate risk, insurers' role in the ecosystem can and should evolve to covering that protection gap, lowering it, right? By getting products into the hands of individuals who need that coverage, first and foremost, okay? But the value proposition begins to evolve to where what you get from your insurance company is not the promise of a payment, but the expertise, the technology, the know-how to say, here are the things we're going to help you do, all right, to mitigate your risk so that these losses are prevented or reduced. And we're going to do that through technology. Here's a water sensor for your home. Okay. Here is a camera for your business. One of the projects I would love to see an insurance company do. I'm here in the United States, and I apologize. I tell a lot of stories, but I'm here in the United States. If you drive on U.S. highways, chances are you're eventually going to see a large tow truck that's branded State Farm, Geico, Allstate, and it's the roadside assistance truck, right? And they show up and they help people who are broken down. They have the light flashers so that people know there's a car broken down. Well, that is a predict and prevent type of behavior. You're preventing an accident from happening. You don't know that it's your customer, okay? But your vehicle is branded, it's out there, and you're helping. Well, why not brand a whole bunch of drones? I would love to see a State Farm fleet of drones, right, over wildfire prone areas during fire season, just like feeding information into firefighting communities, just saying like, hey, we got a fire over here. Here's the live data stream, right? And why would they do this? Why would they invest time and effort in this? Like, well, they're already paying for the roadside assistance vehicles. I mean, why not pay for these fleet of drones where you can use the same software package and upload it into a dashboard and say, this is how we are proactively adding value to our communities and addressing climate risk. Evie, there's another aspect of climate risk I want to talk about in the vein of AI, but let me pause there because I've shared a lot.
No, keep talking. For me,
Yeah.
just you know what? I have like a short note about Benjamin Franklin. Is insurance have a lot of history, and it's funny to say that, but we need to learn from our history, from insurance history, because it's as you say earlier, is like the same kind of object topics, segments. AI maybe it's new like for 2 years, but as you mentioned, data analyst, actually all what we are talking about is not
Mhm.
that kind of a new stuff. It's not like the quantum machine or something like that. It was already happened in insurance in a way or another, but we must know our history.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, keep running for me.
No, 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 you're fine. In a lot of instances, past is prologue for us still, right? I think we need to look at our roots and our history to ensure that we are continuing to evolve in the way that we are still adding value to the communities that we support, that we live in, right? The other piece about AI and climate risk that I think is really important for us to tackle, okay? We've talked a lot about the power of these tools, right? And one of the things that uh, I ran across recently that I've really been struggling with personally, you've been seeing me drink some water, right, while I've been sitting here. I ran across an article that talked about the amount of water that these large language models, these powerful AI tools are using. Okay. So if you think about like a standard Google search, it doesn't use that much energy. But some of these large language models, some of the powerful AI tools we're talking about, they take 10, 20, 40x the power, right, of just a standard search. And generating that power, that compute power, throws off heat. Well, how do we cool data centers? We cool data centers with water. And there are stories of communities, Goodyear, Arizona, as an example, where there are data centers that are being built that are using hundreds of families worth of water a year to cool the servers, right? Because the AI that's being used. Well, somebody did the math on that. Um, and the range is somewhere between like 5 and 50, but for every 5 inquiries you put into ChatGPT, it uses 16 ounces of potable water. Five, right? So think about all those cat videos that are being made with generative AI, or hey, write me some song lyrics for this type of song. Like those things are neat, like I grant you that, but there is a downside risk to using these tools that I don't think we have connected that point. So it's not just about how we use the AI and the value that's being added. It is the resource constraints that are being created because of it. And another article that I was reading put the estimate for the global energy production by 2030 that is going to be used to power these AI tools is about 4.5, 5%. 5% of the total global energy production used to power AI. And many experts do not think that we have the capacity to power it. So you know what they're doing, Evie? They're exploring natural gas, coal, and nuclear to further power the AI. It is a literal reverse course of all the things we've been trying to do to reduce carbon emissions by exploring further burning fossil fuel to use AI. So my message here, all right, for those listening and anyone else who might want to talk with me about this, as a decision maker, when you're thinking about using these AI tools in the insurance community elsewhere, please be cognizant of that downside risk that as we use these tools, as they become more powerful, that yes, you are paying for them upfront, but there are resources that are being taken away from communities, from other efforts, um, competing priorities that are being created because we're using these tools. So it is critical that our leaders, our decision makers, are being responsible corporate citizens, establishing true ESG principles, incorporating into their code of ethics, their employee handbooks, right? Their code of data ethics, how they use these AI tools in a responsible way. Because there is an outcome where the use of these AI tools actually exacerbates the problem. So just like any other tool that has been created by mankind, there is downside risk associated with the use of AI. And one of those risks is continued pressure on climate change.
We almost need to wrap up, but I must ask you about captive insurance. Uh,
Yes.
mm, so, how is the growth of captive insurance influencing the broader insurance landscape right
Mhm.
now?
Yeah. So captive insurance is a wholly owned subsidiary by a parent organization in order to address a particular risk. It is becoming more and more popular. And the stat on captive insurance I would share is the overall commercial insurance market in 2022 was about 25% captive insurers. It's $176 billion. It's growing like gangbusters. So when companies, businesses, large commercial entities are looking for insurance solutions, one of those solutions that's becoming viable is, well, let's just make our own insurance company. And that's becoming a very popular option when they cannot find coverage. So it's an innovative approach. It's becoming more and more popular, right? And the soundbite I like to share with this particular topic is there is a non-zero chance that the insurance industry collapses in the near future. And I say it like that because it's probably unlikely, but it's not zero. And part of the reason it's not zero is we are seeing carriers retreating from markets, like not adapting to address these novel events, these increased frequencies, severities, and businesses, their customers are actually going a different route. They're saying, you can't help me. I'm going to help myself. And in fact, I am more nimble than you. I can use these tools better and faster. I am aligned with my interests. Your priorities are not necessarily my priorities. So I'm going to make my own company where I know that those priorities are aligned with mine. I'm going to buy my own AI tools, right, to address my risk. And it's a topic that's raising in popularity that I'm starting to see where companies are just saying like, look, I can't pay this premium and I need help now. So I'm just going to do it myself. And frankly, it's starting to gain traction. It's starting to gain success. And what's crazy is when you look at their results, okay, of captive insurers, it is better than the commercial insurance industry. So the 2022 combined ratio for commercial carriers, US commercial carriers, was 98% versus captives of 84. They outperformed them by 14 points on the combined ratio. So I I would caution everyone when we think about like where we're headed and you know insurers are always going to be around because they have been around. Like there is a non-zero chance that the industry collapses. I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetimes, but you are starting to see other solutions like captive insurance starting to be explored.
It's maybe not collapse because something will happen. Maybe it will be like the rebirth of the insurance industry, like
I think
uh
that's the outcome.
like
Yeah.
the phoenix, something will happen because climate change will have maybe new model risk, and of course captive is like a new, it's not new but like a new for the majority, like a insurance model, and more started to explore it, as you mentioned. 25% is it's
Wild.
okay.
Wild.
Yeah, it's wild. We need to wrap up, but luckily for me, I'm going to meet you next month, but
Yes. It's
in
going to be great.
ITC. So, yeah, I can't wait. For those planning to attend to ITC this year, how would you advise them to prepare to get like the most of the out of the conference?
Yeah. So first thing I would share is it's Vegas. Okay. So all of the distractions that are there at Vegas, like just on a normal day, are there during the conference. Okay. So be deliberate with your time, be protective of your schedule, have fun. Okay, sure. I'm not saying don't have fun. But make a list of the things that you want to accomplish and make sure you get those done before you let your hair down, right? We should connect ahead of time via social media. If you please feel free to share my contact info on my
Yeah, of
social media
course.
profile following the podcast. Um, One of the things that I would offer is just advice, this being my third time going to this particular conference, have conversations with people and be very deliberate about the questions that you are asking them. So one of the things that I did my first go rounds from advice from another colleague is when somebody is sharing like, hey, we have AI. Okay, well, what is the use case? What does it actually do? How are you governing the solution? Who are the customers that you've worked with? And you would be shocked how quickly some of those talking points fall apart when you start asking those very detailed, deliberate questions. And it starts as like, well, the person who like runs this is not here and they're talking to this person. Well, when can I talk to them? Right? Or are they here? How do we want to follow up? Like just be very deliberate and crisp with the answers that you're looking for with your questions. And that'll help you cut through a lot of the noise. Again, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to see. So planning ahead of time, I think, is really critical.
Thank you for the super nerd.
Thank
Frankly,
you.
it
Yeah,
was wow, it was fascinating, and I really can't wait for next week. Thank you very much.
you're very
Thank you.
welcome. Thanks, Evie.